really extensively about events and what you do best. And you've been doing this, for quite some time. So I'll be sure to let Stephanie just kind of introduce herself. So anyway, keep your questions coming across, and we'll wait to the end to answer those questions as we have time. And if I know the answers, I'll chat you back as well. But Stephanie, are you ready on your side? Because I'm more than happy to.
I believe I am. Hopefully
All
my
right.
computer will not freeze again.
Okay,
We all hate
good.
when that happens.
No, that sounds good. So
the hindrance and the things we love and hate about tech, right? When it works great, it's awesome. And when it doesn't, oh my God.
yeah. Well,
So-
Stephanie is one of the smartest people that I know as it relates to events, and she lives in the heart of events land out in Las Vegas, and she'll tell you more about that. And she's a wealth of knowledge and information. So as you have questions, chat them across, and I'll be sure to either weave them into the conversation or we'll answer those at the end. So Stephanie, I'll turn it over to you. And thanks so much for being a part of the Niche webinar series. And I'm excited to hear what you have to share about making events.
I appreciate you having me. So let's go ahead and share. Here we go. Great.
Sounds good.
Didn't freeze this time. That's always a plus. And give it a moment while it pops up. It always takes a little bit. So a little bit about me. I'm not going to do a whole lot. First of all, thank you for spending an hour with me, 45 minutes. I really appreciate it. I love to share knowledge. I love to do training. And I'm second generation in the trade show business. What's my relation to publishing? Well, my mom was a publisher. So she had a trade publication in the apparel industry, and her largest competitor did a trade show in Atlanta, and we were based in Los Angeles, and she figured if he could do it, she could do it. And so she started doing her own shows. And from there, she started publication in Mexico and did shows in Latin America for many, many years. And then we went on to manage a lot of events. For those of you that may or may not know, trade shows are events on steroids, and there are a ton of events in them. So you could say that I've grown up in the business. I think I worked my first show when I was 10 and my first international show when I was 14. My mom believed in bringing us all in, and my dad believed in bringing us in to see what the family did. It was a family business. So I do live in Las Vegas. I probably go to more events in a couple of months than most people attend in a year or maybe even a lifetime. And I love them. I love the energy that happens. I'm also an advocate for some stuff on digital. I was part of the Virtual Event Institute as subject matter expert. So I'm not against it, but what we're really going to focus on today is the live. So let's get going. Okay, so why produce events? Well, diversification of your revenue stream is number one. It's a really great way to make money. And it's also about community building, right? If you bring everybody together, you have more buy-in. You're known as having integrity. You really care about the industry. So there's all different kinds of events, of course. There's B2C and B2B, and we're going to talk about both. And I think most of the stuff that I'm sharing today applies to both. But if we want to get in, if you have questions at the end, again, happy to answer. So as you can see, there's the definition of event from the dictionary. Mine is a purposeful gathering together of people or community to transact for social and or business purposes for a set amount of time in a set location. And that's the thing. It's for a set amount of time in a set location. Live versus digital. Okay, so digital has its place for sure. But digital events, which are more than one thing, maybe roundtables work for part of a day. Nobody has the patience anymore to sit for longer than an hour, maybe two, and take in the education without getting up, doing other things, checking on their emails, whatever it is. The NPS scores are horrific on digital event for sponsors. Out of a minus 100 to plus 100, it's a minus 57 from 2020 and 2021, which basically means that I think the only thing ranked lower may be the IRS. So they're really bad. Again, they're great for education, but they're terrible for networking, and they're terrible for generating leads for sponsors. They really don't bring a whole lot to the table, but they're awesome for education. In-person events provide genuine leads, networking, and more ROI, or as I like to say, ROO, return on objective, for visitors and sponsors / exhibitors. So there's just more return for everybody. Content is king. And as media publishers, you already have the content. Your editors and writers And photographers have their fingers on the pulse of the industry, right? So this is a way to repurpose it. The difference is with an event, right? You can capture and create and repurpose everything at one time in one place. You can take the videos and you can repurpose them in small bits. You can do white papers with the speakers. But here's something that's super, super important. You've got to provide fresh content that your readers cannot get anywhere else, because the internet is huge and you can find stuff for everything, right? But if you're doing fresh content that they can't get anywhere else, it helps bring them in. I think that you should always address the elephants in the room for your industry. Whatever the biggest topics are, whatever the biggest pain points are, address them front and center. People want to hear it, they're interested, and they will attend. The other thing is that we want to, invite the disruptors, hold debates. We want an event to run seamlessly in terms of logistics, but we want to build in high points throughout the event. We want people to go, oh my God, you weren't there? Really? You missed it. Those are the kinds of events that we want to go to, and those are the kinds that we want to produce. Speakers, it does allow access to the rock stars in your industry that most of your readers probably will never get to meet and never have access to. And you want to make sure that your speaker contracts always include, and I mean always include, social media and video promotions. You want to make sure that you're taking advantage of it. The last thing, of course, are bloggers and influencers, and everybody hates the word influencers. Raise your hand if you hate the word. Yep. Makes us think of TV personalities, et cetera, et cetera. But these people have a huge fan base. The macro ones obviously have huge amounts, but the micro ones within your industry can actually be more influential. And chances are good that they may have more followers than your publications, which is really scary. So you want to work with them, you want to bring them in, you want to give them attention, you want to put them on a stage, you want them to do it. Podcasters, you want to give them an area and access to the other speakers. So if they've got a large enough following, you may need to comp them, you may need to pay them. Don't make them pay to come to your show, and don't be cheap with them. Be respectful. Take a look at their numbers, their real numbers. There's an app, it's called Snowball, S-N-O, Snowball, B-A-L-L. And in there, you can actually find out the ranking for influencers. It's very good. It's out of a company out of Toronto, and they've been quite successful in measurement. So it's a good one to know. Okay, so let's get into the event, shall we? Is your event going to be consumer? Is it going to be trade? Is it going to be both? That's not uncommon. As a note, most convention centers and hotels do give date preference to those events that contract hotel rooms. It's about filling up the, heads in beds and getting the room tax, which usually help pay for convention centers and a lot of other things in the hospitality industry, and sometimes in the whole city. Are you going to do a conference, or are you going to do an exhibition? And if you're going to do an exhibition, there are tabletops, kiosks, or booths, right? And tabletops, I have an illustration of one right there. Tabletops are a lot easier. You don't need as much space. They're great for hotel ballrooms. And in fact, I think the number was 30% to 40% of all exhibitions in the United States are held in hotels, which is kind of interesting. So again, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And then, what kind of event, right? Is it going to be local? Is it going to be regional? Is it going to be national in scope? Is it going to be an annual event, or do you want to grow it, start with one and then grow it around the country? I know that there are some folks watching this that are doing that already and have been quite successful. Again, you want to start small. You want to start and do it well and build on to the next and the next and the next. Lastly, is it going to be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? Possibly grow it to a week-long celebration. I've seen it done. Again, starting with the mothership, then you can grow. Start out walking and then learn to run, right? Excuse me one moment. I'm going to hopefully, Ryan, can you hear? There's construction going on down on Las Vegas Boulevard, which has just started.
It's not too bad.
It's not too bad. Everybody will give me one moment. I will go close the door, and hopefully that will soundproof it. Of course, they started as soon as I did this. So give me one moment. I am so sorry.
And for those of you that were asking about that website, that Snowball, SNOBALL.com.
Totally unprofessional, but there was no construction going on all morning until I started. So
No worries. It's Las Vegas. It's Las Vegas.
And it's Las Vegas Boulevard. I live in downtown Las Vegas. So yep, it's big machinery. So all right, we'll go back to the scope of the events. I think surveys are really helpful. Keep them short to the point, hold a contest, give awards, giveaways. You can do things like a gift certificate in the city where you're going to do your show for dinner. You can do a free subscription, maybe free registration for the event. It could be anything. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but anything that's going to help you get more information out of people is better. How big is your visitor universe, right? Is it 10,000? Is it 5,000? How many people do you think will really come? The numbers, there was a few years ago, UBM, which is now Informa, the largest trade show company in the world, UBM Asia went into a partnership with Alibaba, which is like Amazon for China and other places in Asia, to see if they could bring people in. And they weren't very successful. And they actually got up and talked about how it didn't work. But I think now, since COVID, people want to come to events. So you may actually get more traction than you would have a couple of years ago. The other thing I think is important is what geographical location or region has the most subscribers to your publications. Think about that, because that's maybe where you want to hold your first event. If it's a drivable thing, you may get a higher turnout than if people have to get on a plane and fly. I attend an annual convention for conventioneers. It's called the International Association for Exhibition Management, or Exhibitions and Events. And it's in Louisville this year. And I have been tracking the prices for 2 months. From Las Vegas to Louisville, on average, the price has not gone below $700 and is up to $1,200. So that is something to think about right now with airfare. Hopefully over the next year or so, prices will go down. We can only hope. Anyway, competing events. Are there any in your space, in your industry? If so, what are they? Where are they held? Where do they take place, right? When do they take place? And how big are they? If they're really big, perhaps you want to take a niche out of that and start small that way. You don't want to go, you can compete against the biggest guys, especially if they're held on the other side of the country, but you want to be very smart and strategic about it. And then of course, what's your budget? A lot of times first time events don't make money, but the second and third years they do. So it is an investment, but it's also an investment into a new revenue stream. And as we know, new products don't always take off right away. Sometimes we have to sit there and watch them and nurture them and go forward. Okay, so how do we convert advertisers into exhibitors and or sponsors? They're already paying you. They're already paying you. So they already have that trust and that relationship with you. Having an event offers them an additional opportunity for thought leadership and reaching more people in person to try out their products. Everyone likes to kick the tires. They like to see stuff live. It demonstrates that you're an integral part of the community. You can bring in new product areas, new technology areas. People always want to see what's new. That's the number one reason people go to trade shows and for most events, besides networking. They're 1 and 2. And since COVID, it's more a little bit networking and then seeing new stuff. But I think we're starting to see it go back to the other way around. You can recruit industry companies that you've never had a relationship with or have always turned you down for your publications. And you can also find adjacent companies and bring in an experiment with expanding your niche. Are there big players like auto companies or luxury brands who want to get a hold of your audience and want to get in front of your audience? Those can be really good for non-traditional sponsorships. And you always want to make sure you under-promise and over-deliver. So recently, the TICE Expo, which is the International Surfaces event, it's a very large show held here in Las Vegas every January, February. did something very unusual. They partnered with an interior designer who took over a home and completely took it from the 1970s to the 2020s. And as a result, she used all kinds of sponsors for it. All the suppliers were from Tice, from the show, and they supplied different flooring and all different kinds of materials. Then what they did is they opened it up for house tours. And so they actually got a car sponsorship. They got a wine sponsorship. That was fun. And it was a chance for people to come in and see this amazing, amazing house that had been redone. And all of it was done using the suppliers from the show. So you can get creative with these things. It's your imagination. What will people be interested in? Okay. Uh-oh. Please don't tell me. Oh, sorry. Sorry. That scared me. My computer has decided today, between that and the construction down below. Okay. So we're back here. So exhibitor, sponsor sales and recruitment, right? Offer packages, advertising and event pricing. I'm sure a number of you take advantage of whatever the big shows are in your industry, and you have a pre-show edition, an at-show edition, and a post-show edition. There's no reason you can't do it for your own. Also, if you combine the event and the advertising together, event space or sponsorship, again, you can get more money and increase your revenue share. Be reasonable in what you charge, especially for the first time. People always want to know, well, how many people are you going to have come? Be honest. Be honest, be transparent. We don't know, but we're anticipating this many based on all of the market research we've done. Is always a really good answer. Offer tier pricing for sponsorships, lower level, higher level. The more you charge, the more exclusive that opportunity should be. And also, if you're doing it on a first-time event, include the right of first refusal to those sponsors who put their money down with you for early buy-in. Reward them for that. Because other people will come in and say, well, I want that sponsorship. It's like, well, okay, you wouldn't even answer the phone last year. So we're going to let this company have it that did answer the phone first. But we have other sponsorships, right? Another note, you want to have the same salesperson do the recruitment that sells your publications. You want to make sure it's the same person because they already have the relationship and they can be consultative. Don't be so into your tiered sponsorship offerings that you can't go custom. And in fact, we're seeing a lot of that. People want their ROI. Some things like a banner may not be meaningful to somebody, and sometimes it is. So be open to that and open to collaborating with your sponsors and exhibitors for their success. Because if they're successful, you're going to be successful. Use your social media, the LinkedIn groups. Private Facebook groups is something that a lot of people are starting to clue in on. You can join them. You don't have to start them, although if you do, that's great. People really enjoy them, and there's a lot of success going on, at least in the events business that I'm hearing about, by people using private Facebook groups, maybe even some more than LinkedIn groups, believe it or not. Of course, there's TikTok everywhere, on Instagram and Twitter, and we'll see what happens with Twitter now that they have a new owner. Understand that for first-time events, everything can be a challenge. Nothing is easy, but if you go back to when you launched your publications or you've done big changes in your publications, it's a challenge. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have challenges all the time, but that's part of the process. Have patience, use perseverance, and remember, it's about the value to the client. Of course, you want your value, but if you focus on the client, if you focus on your sponsors and your visitors, and you give them and you deliver the value, it will come around. And again, always be transparent. Don't lie. People hate being lied to more than anything. As you know, if you lose the trust of someone, it's very hard to get it back. You can be positive, but be as truthful as you can be. Okay, so let's talk about converting readers into visitors, right? As I said earlier, communities want to gather in person, especially post-COVID. They're going bonkers, especially in the B2C world. They're really doing well right now because people got into hobbies or cooking or whatever it may be, and they want to meet with other people that are as passionate as they are. and they will travel and they will invest money in it. Again, you want to offer content they can't get anywhere else. Offer networking and matchmaking between attendees to attendees, as well as attendees to sponsors and exhibitors. Are some things, there are some products out there, but it may be something as easy as a meetup for first timers, or this particular niche, or these people who love this, people who love orange cats. It doesn't really matter. Offer some ideas and some places for people to do meetups on site. People, they love it, because then they get to meet a small group of people, and then they keep seeing them throughout the show, and it makes them feel like they're a bigger part of the community. And again, you're offering access to new suppliers, products, or tech, or all of the above. We want to entice the exhibitors in, right? Look at these pictures here, right? I'm not sure what kind of event. I think that's an art event, actually, on the top. And then, of course, the other one was an event for events, and they had the FOMO, So the big thing is you want to create FOMO. You want to create FOMO. You want to partner with airlines and hotels and newspapers and radio and TV. The first year may be more challenging. After you keep records, and we'll talk about that at the end, it's a little easier. You want to use your bloggers and influencers. You want to make sure that you sign contracts with those people. You want to sign contracts and just make sure that they agree that they're going to do certain things, and you're going to give them certain things as well. Limited space, that's always a good one. We're going to sell out, or we sold out. The concept of a sellout, an event selling out and you can't get in last minute is huge. Do a tiered pricing structure. Start out lower, higher day up. Everybody does it because it works, right? You also want to do tiered pricing. And by that, I mean, not everybody is going to have the same journey, and they shouldn't expect to. VIP prices are completely different than regular prices. We're seeing it everywhere from concerts and meet and greets on up. You can use those. People are used to it. It's not an unusual thing. However, make sure that the price is commensurate with the experience and the exclusivity. Something I've seen done is if there's a really big speaker and people pay for access, reserve the first 2 or 3 rows in the front of the, before the speaker and the seats. That's a beautiful thing. It doesn't cost you anything. And it makes people feel very special, or a meet and greet with the speakers after the event. And also make sure that you use your exhibitors and sponsors to help you. It doesn't cost you anything. So that, again, that is a net savings. All of these things will help you make sure that you do it. I forgot to mention social media campaigns. I've seen all kinds of things. CES, which is the largest trade show in the United States, the Consumer Electronics Show, they did a YouTube competition. Whoever had the most enthusiastic, video that they posted using the hashtag for CES that year, they were awarded free hotel room nights, which in Vegas during that time is a lot of money. So, use contests and give awards, and make sure that whoever wins, you acknowledge publicly, right? What happened was, by using these different tools, they had a ton of content that they were able to share. And again, it goes back to creating FOMO. All right, so tips to save. Date selection. Date selection is huge. The shoulder seasons can be very good, especially if you're going to somewhere like Florida or Arizona or California, right? Warm weather, Texas. Holidays, depending on your show, could be a really good time for a consumer show. We've seen a lot of those done. Are you going to use a hotel, a convention center, or a special event building? The San Diego Bay Wine and Food Festival is held on the Promontory in San Diego Bay, and it's coming up in about a week or so. Fabulous, fabulous sold out event every year. And they're ones that started with one event and they moved it into a week-long event. But they started small, got it down, and kept moving. Maybe you want to co-locate with another event with a shared audience, like if you have a little bit of an overlap. That can save money. You can save money on registration. You can save money by using the same contractors or decorators for setup, the same AV companies. So you can get more savings because you're coming in together, right? Doing bulk quantity instead of small. One thing you want to always make sure is ask who else is booked in the event at the same time as yours, right? Because it may not be a good mix. Like, for example, you may have a religious event and a cannabis show. Not the best in the same building, just saying. Or maybe, you know, you have an AA event and a whiskey show. Again, you want to take a look at who's in the building with you and always ask, because that may be a death knell for your event if it's the wrong mix. Lastly, there's a difference between being thrifty and cheap. Don't be cheap. Everybody notices. If you don't think people are going to notice, you're wrong. Don't be cheap. People don't like it. They feel taken advantage of, especially if they're paying an entry fee. So here's some good ones. Now, this picture here was taken last week. It was a hydration station. They had quite a few of them at Money 2020. And it's for high level fintech. People pay on average a couple of $1,000s to attend, and the exhibitors pay a lot more. They wine and dine everybody the whole show. They brought in Foreigner to play on one of the stages on the show floor one night. So they spend a lot of money. But on food and beverage alone, unofficially, you know, their food and beverage bill has 2 commas in it. So it's a substantial amount, but they're still using water stations because they're cheaper and better and more green than bottled water. Then there comes the question of, do we want to do a cash bar versus a hosted bar versus maybe do beer, wine, and a specialty cocktail or a mocktail, depending on what you're offering at your receptions. You know, it just depends on your audience and what you're charging to get in. Buffet is always cheaper than plated, always. Do you want to do a brunch versus breakfast and lunch? You may want to. You know, here's another idea. If you're serving breaks, ask the caterers to cut the brownies and the cookies in half, because usually they're huge, right? They're 5 million calories for one, and they're so good and so sugary, but cut them in half. You can also do the same thing with croissants, the really large ones, or the coffee, you know, like coffee cake. So again, take a look at what those things, or maybe serve the sandwiches cut in half on the buffet instead of the full sandwich, so people can take a half of one or a half of another. Find out, you know, again, if there's another group in the venue, ask if you order the same food that they've ordered, if that'll save you money, because it means the kitchen only has to make one. Excuse me. It's a really good way, and people don't think about it. Another thing is, if you're looking for decor, ask the hotel what they have in their basement. I've done that at convention centers as well. And all of a sudden you have the most phenomenally decorated place and you didn't have to pay anything extra for it. So ask these kinds of questions. Ask what, you know, another thing is when you're talking to the hotels or the convention centers, what else do you have? What else do you have? It doesn't hurt to ask. They can always say no, right? But if they say yes and it doesn't cost you, again, something else that goes to your bottom line that you didn't have to spend. A few more tips: labor and staffing. You want to use a mix of paid and temp, students, volunteers, fans. Make sure that those people sign an agreement on what they're going to do for your discounted pass. And you may want to consider outsourcing operations, for example, if you don't have an experienced crew. There's a lot of really fine people around the United States that I would be happy to recommend that can come in and really help you with the negotiation soup to nuts on that. Again, I think your salespeople and your marketing people should do what they do best, and they know your audience. Operations is something that's easily outsourced. And then, things like signage. Get directional arrows that you can just affix so you don't have to keep buying them year after year after year. A lot of large trade shows in the US, they go with the same color scheme for 3 years so they don't have to buy more signage every year and start over. If there's digital signs available at the venue, even better. You don't have to pay for it and it's green. So here are some examples I want to go through in terms of labor and staffing, right? So CES, which I referred to earlier, they allow people to bring their families, their spouses, anybody that's over 18 if they're kids, and come in and share the room with the staff person, right? And they come and work the show and they actually get paid for it. They get paid a daily rate, but it's a great way to use somebody who's already involved and their spouse is already there, and they get a chance to see what their spouse has been working on for the last year and so hard. Another one is the World Ag Expo in the Central Valley of California. It's the largest agricultural show in the United States. They have 1,000 volunteers that all get special jackets, and they have a waiting list. And these people do most everything. They only have a paid staff of about 5 or 8 people for this annual event, and they do other things as well. Something else they do is, because there's the food and beverage is a little challenging in the middle of the Central Valley with nothing there. They allow all of the nonprofit groups, the schools, the ag, I'm forget, like the what is it? Sorry, city girl here, but
4-H.
4-H. Thank you. Everyone's trying to help me there. They come in and they supply the food, obviously under, with the code, the health code, because you don't want people to get sick. And let me tell you, the food there rocks. It is amazing. And then the last thing is a show that's held in Burbank, or it used to be, called CTNX, a Cartoon Network. And it's actually Creative Industries, but it's all the people that do all the animation, and some of the larger animation companies, the studios, and also video companies use it as a chance to look at portfolios and hire new talent. But because there is a gate, there is a price for registration and for education, she does use fans, to come in, and they work for a certain amount of time, and they have specific shifts, and in return, they get to attend the event for free. So there are ways to save a lot of money. You just have to plan ahead and go with what you think is best. Okay, a few more tips. Everything is negotiable. The hotel sends you a contract for your event. You look and go, everything on there is negotiable. Get a good lawyer, go through it. It's their boilerplate. You have a boilerplate that you make exceptions to. Don't be afraid to ask for changes. Pay really strict attention to deadlines, especially from your suppliers, because you don't want to get paid more, or from the venue in terms of the cancellation policies. Hotels are being really big and sticking it to people. If you can get out of having to pay attrition, which is the cost for the hotel rooms that you've blocked out that are not picked up, even better. Start small. Like I said, if you sell out, woo, we're sold out. Awesome. Be aware of the union rules in whatever cities you're in, right? If you're a right to work state versus union, and ask. Your hotel will probably help you out, as will whoever you contract to set up the event. Make sure you have your contracts all reviewed before signing. I can't stress that enough. And then whenever you can, use local suppliers. Unless you're doing multi-cities, use local. It's cheaper. They know the cities. They know how to find stuff. They've probably worked in those venues a million times, and use their expertise, because they will tell you how to save money and what is a better way to do something. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just can make the rooms look a lot prettier. And then post-event, have your surveys ready to go before the event. Definitely send out surveys. Definitely get an NPS score. Would you recommend this event to a friend or colleague? That should be your first question. If not, why not? Leave it open and read it, because it will make you, as hard as it is when you put everything into your event, you have to know the good, the bad, and the ugly if you're going to ever make it better. Also, in those surveys, ask for testimonials, and make sure that you ask for permission to use those said testimonials, right? Track your budget, track your budget, track your budget. How off were you, how far off were you, and why? You really want to get into the nitty gritty on that, and you want to look at your line items, and you may have to adjust it for the next year. Track the value, right? It'll help you negotiate for future events. Local CVBs, the Convention and Visitor Bureaus, should be able to help you track the numbers if you ask ahead of time. Again, they can't go back, but if you ask beforehand, they can also give you advice on how to do it if they don't do it themselves. So how much business was done? You can ask your exhibitors, right? So you want to do 2 different surveys, one for visitors, one for your exhibitors/sponsors. If you don't do it right away, as soon as the event closes, everybody forgets. And it's just more work when you're already exhausted from having put on the event. And also, if you can find out how much money was spent locally, that's a really good buy, because it helps you negotiate the following year, especially if you're using a city-owned facility. All right, so we got a quick quiz, right? True or false? Virtual events have been super successful. It's false. Events are a natural outgrowth of publication. Absolutely 100%. If you're not taking advantage of it, you are leaving money on the table. Contracts are not negotiable. That would be false. Always negotiate. Rule number one, always negotiate. Events, when done right, are a smart diversification and added revenue stream for publishers. Absolutely 100%. And here's a little bit how to contact me and what we do. We do viability studies, development and strategy, sponsorship strategy and development, and international business development for exhibitions and events. And with that, we can go into questions and comments, right? Ryan, did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, this is really, really great. I had some really good takeaways. And one of the ones that you mentioned relates to a couple of questions, but let's start with this first question, which I think is great, from my friend Scott. Publisher of Natural Health Magazine, started the Holistic Health Expo, a consumer event 6 years ago, been growing, uses Eventbrite to track attendees. Exhibitors love the expo. Question: should I charge for attendees to attend? Historically, it has been free.
Yes. In a word, yes. And I'll tell you why. You're going to weed out the looky-loos that just come to free samples. You're going to get better qualified people that your exhibitors and your sponsors want to see, because they're willing to spend money and make the investment in coming into the show. They've already been to the show, especially, if you've been able to track the attendees that have been there before. I would say definitely charge. You don't have to charge a lot, but $15 a head if you have 1,000 people. Hello, who doesn't want an extra 15 grand for their event on your bottom line? If you get a lot of pushback, you can always have the exhibitors be able to give out X number of passes, or if you're working with radio or TV, you can use this code to get a half price coupon. We've all seen it for the car shows, right? But what it does is if people pay, they're going to show up. They're less likely to just burn a ticket if they pay. You don't have to charge a fortune, and again, you can go into a tiered access if you want to try it. So if you have some rock stars in your business, that are going to be speaking, you can do meet and greets and charge a premium for that. You can charge $50. You can charge whatever it is. But yeah, I think, start small, get people used to it, but why not? It's, that the people that come there are then serious. You may have a drop off initially, but in the end, you're going to grow a better event for it.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Predict how many people you're going to have.
Correct. And that's so important to the sponsorship sales side of the business as well. Another thing on that, for Scott and anybody else that has public in attendance, just went to an event where they were not prepared for cash for people. So there's this thing called cash that still exists in America. They weren't prepared to accept cash or change out cash. They also were not necessarily at another event prepared for credit cards. They had one square reader and for 700 people. And so, friends, just remember when you're doing public events like that you really need to be prepared for both. You can't operate an event, especially one like the size of Scott's, on one square reader. You really need to be prepared for that. Maybe you have some other thoughts on that and or Eventbrite.
Yeah, I think, Eventbrite does a good job. You can help track things. It'll integrate with Zoom if you need it. I mean, it's a good product. I'm signed up with it, and I know people who use it regularly. And being able to track your data is so important. I mean, as publishers getting through, congratulations to all of you for making it through intact. You're scrappy and you're survivors, because the pandemic, not easy. The shutdown, not easy, right? But this is an opportunity to really use your data and be smart. Take a look at what segments are you bringing in and adjust your marketing onto that, and also with Eventbrite, you can see how many people have paid and where they're from. And then, oh, maybe we need to do some more social media or throw some marketing dollars over here. I don't want to say pivot. I'm going to say pirouette around. I'm so tired of that other word. And so I think those things will really help a lot. Use your data. It's your friend. It's not the enemy. Just ask better questions. Good stuff in, good stuff out. Bad stuff in, useless stuff out.
Makes sense. We've had some pretty good luck with QR codes getting to surveys. At the events, you'll see the QR codes on the sign. People will scan it. I'm wondering if you found, now the question is incentivizing people to take the survey, or do you feel like just people take surveys regardless?
No, I think it's always good to incentivize the survey. And I would do something that relates to the city that you're going into, or if you're changing cities, make the winners, give them something for the next event. Give them something for the next event. If you're running something and you want to know now what people are thinking, like right there on site, then offer a goodie bag of some kind on site, or maybe an Amex card for, or a not an Amazon, but something that they can use like to go to a restaurant, right? A certificate to go to a restaurant, or to go pick up something somewhere, or something good at an exhibitor's booth if it's a cash and carry kind of a show. And if you're doing cash and carry, you want to make sure you know what the rules are as far as taxes go. Sales tax. You always want to ask that question, because you don't want Mr. Tax or Ms. Tax Collector coming onto your show. I've seen it done, and it's not pretty. So if people are going to sell, they have to follow those rules. Very, very important.
What about a question about safety protocols? What safety protocols? I'm assuming somebody's mentioning COVID. What safety protocols are you seeing in place if things completely changed, gone away? What are you seeing at shows?
I think people are wearing masks if they want to wear masks. Otherwise, they're not. For the most part, people are not. Like if you go through the airport now, you'll see a few people wear masks. I wear a mask until I get on the plane and it starts and the air gets purified, because I travel a lot and I just don't want to get ill. You have to remember that it's on you as the organizer. You have hundreds or thousands of people whose safety is in your hands. You have got to take the fire marshal rules and regulations seriously. You have to have a crisis plan with your team. Who's going to be the point person? Who's going to do what? You have to communicate, okay, if somebody faints, somebody has a heart attack on the show floor, what's going to happen? And this is for public or trade. It can happen to anybody, anywhere. So you need to have team meetings ahead of time and have a clear line of how things will happen for crisis management. It doesn't have to be that hard. Every single venue has a crisis plan. Whatever they say goes. So you always want to make sure, if Mr. Fire Marshal says something, guess what? That's what goes.
Yeah.
So, don't be nervous if you see the fire marshal show up at your event, just to check it out and make sure everything's copacetic. Most of the time they're fine. They may say, oh, that exhibitor has encroached on an exit. Oops. So you want to be looking around for that. But again, you are responsible for these people's safety while you're there.
Makes sense. Staffing, do you have any metrics or secret algorithms or, whatever in terms of staffing? We've got 3 or 4 people that have asked questions about how to know how much staff to have.
Not really, unfortunately. You're always your first day, you're going to always need the most for the open, and because that's when you get your biggest rush of people in.
Right.
And then, mornings, whatever time you're opening. So if you can stagger the staff, that's great. I like using, partial volunteer staff. Obviously, you can cut it back day by day. The last day will usually never have as much traffic as the first day.
Right.
A weekend, if you have a public event, will always have more traffic than a weekday. Right. So there's no magic formula per se. It just depends on what kind of event you're having. If you're having a food and beverage event, for sure you need more staff, because you have to have people policing where the exhibitors depositing stuff, and you also want to make sure that the trash is being picked up.
Good thought.
There's nothing worse than like you're at an event and you see the overflowing garbage bins.
Yep.
Not good.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
I wish I had a better answer for you. It's really industry dependent on what you're doing. If you're doing a conference versus an exhibition, it's a different number.
Right.
You want to have people that are going to scan badges coming in to the different conferences. You always want to kind of track that information to see which ones are better or worse. And to see if there's an interest for somebody or not. You never know.
Right.
But sometimes we can think, oh my God, this is going to be a hit. This speaker is going to be like the everything, and everybody goes somewhere else. So it's really good to track those numbers and keep the better records you keep, the better you can do planning forward.
Agreed. Yeah. And I've never seen in a survey somebody say you had too much staff. Right. So, it's kind of always good. My wife that does 12, large events a year, she always likes to say, you really can never have too much staff. I mean, you're not going to get that as a complaint, but you always will get complaints if you don't have, enough staff.
Well,
what about getting out of the hotel business? Question on that. I would love, Stephanie, as we've talked about before, I'd love to get out of the hotel business. But for what we do, it kind of plays into it. My wife does not do any hotels and only does event centers. So the question really is, from somebody,
Pardon me.
kind of what's your preference? Event spaces versus hotels,
Depends on
pros
the
and cons.
event. It depends on the event. Some event spaces are way better. Excuse me.
Yeah, I'd agree
All
with
that
that.
speaking in 10% humidity.
Yeah, I would really agree with that, because there are some circumstances, for example, when we do our media sales academies, I really don't need to have those at a hotel. As a matter of fact, if we do them again next year, we won't go to a hotel, because I don't need all the food and beverage. I don't need all of that AV commitment. I don't need all those extensive contracts. I can get away with doing an event venue, just having a caterer bring in food, and people find their own hotels. Anyway,
Absolutely. It
yeah.
makes it a lot easier. And it really depends. I mean, if you can get out of the 4 square hotel for your event, go for it. Go for it. Just be aware of all the extra costs and things that you have to do. Catering, waste disposal, bathrooms,
Audiovisual.
audiovisual, tents, heaters or air conditioners. All of those things can add up. So you really want to double check and see what those things are going to cost you.
Right.
Outdoors event. Okay, well, what if it rains?
Yep.
What are you going to do? What's your plan B?
Yeah.
So, the ease of a hotel or a convention center or an actual building that's purposely built for special events can be handy, but it's not always the best choice.
Yeah. One of the other questions, we have just a couple more that have been sent in, and this is kind of funny. Do you find that sponsors and exhibitors just always tend to complain?
Oh my gosh.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah. Okay. But my mom had and I'm second generation. So she always said, they're paying us for the right to complain. You can take some people are always going to complain. They're always going to bitch.
Yep.
You have a certain amount, but let me give you an example of a complaint. We were doing a show in Mexico City. There was an earthquake during setup. The biggest complaint we had from exhibitors on the survey, the thing that they least liked was the earthquake.
That's
okay. I'll take a note and not have one again. I mean, okay. So certain things you have to take it with a grain of salt. Some people had a fight with their kids or their spouse or their significant other, or they got a flat tire on the way there, or they got yelled at by their boss for something that wasn't their fault. So you're always going to have a certain percentage. If it seems like you're getting the same complaints over and over and over again, then you do have an issue and you do not need to address it. And I think it's always better to address it head on, because the ostrich thing does not work. People are going to talk and you'd rather know what they're saying. And if there is an issue, then you actually visibly, talk to them about it. If you have some really upset sponsors, go and speak with them at the event.
Yeah. Last question that I have from folks, and feel free to send some more in if you'd like to. Are you noticing that people are doing more hybrid events, or are they just basically now saying, hey, we're just going back to live?
They're doing asynchronous events. That's such a hard word to say. It's one of those that you could write and then you try to say it.
Yeah.
So people tried hybrid. It's like doing 2 events at one time. Sure. It's super hard, super duper hard. However, I do highly suggest that you capture content.
Agreed.
Every which way you can. You don't have to live stream. You can capture it and you can either put it behind a paywall later, depending on who it is, or whatever else. The other thing is, if you do have a video team on, or you can, you have somebody in your office who's really good at video editing, get a sizzle reel, make a sizzle reel at your event. People always respond to video better, to see the event and see the vibrancy and see people talking and so on and so forth. So I highly suggest that. But yeah, definitely capture as much content as you possibly can to repurpose, and maybe put it behind some of it behind a paywall.
Yeah,
more money, additional revenue.
I saw a couple of events where you can pay an extra, say, $125, and then you get access to the videos of the sessions afterwards. And that makes sense. Is that moderately common, or is it not as uncommon?
Not as common as it should be. I think it's an excellent suggestion. And I think that there is a lot of interest, especially however big your database is, there's going to be more people who don't come to your event than come to your event.
Right. Makes
so
sense.
if you can find a way to get them to also pay, it increases the longevity of your event from 1 day or 3 days to a whole year. And you can also increase your revenue and your bottom line.
Yeah, that makes sense. Friends, any other questions you have, send them in. And while we're waiting for those, Stephanie, I sure do appreciate not only you just sharing some information, but also just coming prepared with some really great stuff for folks. And friends that are watching, friends of Niche, I really highly recommend Stephanie. She's a wealth of information. And if you have an opportunity to
And I love
need a
project.
consultant, she
I love
loves those,
project.
loves those kind of projects. And I just
can't be entrepreneurs, right?
Yes. Yep, for sure. And I just kind of chatted across, Stephanie, to everybody that's here. We'd love to have you see the events that we put on for all of you as publishers. And so there's the link over. Stephanie mentioned a sizzle reel. Go to that link and you'll see what she's talking about, because we have a video crew that comes in videos for almost one purpose only, really, and that is to create the promo for next year. Sponsors love it. Put it on your self-service sales page for your sponsors. And then I also included in the chat box, use the code Ryan100. That'll take $100 off the event. But I'd really love for y'all to reach out to Stephanie and have her give you some.
Thought of one more thing.
Yeah.
One more little tidbit. With your sponsors, have someone, maybe their salesperson, assigned to go around, and when it's at its busiest, get pictures and send them.
Agreed.
Because a lot of times the person who signed the contract is not the person who's on site.
Fair enough.
If you're sending pictures live at the show and you're tweeting them out and you're social media them out with the company name and the hashtag of the event, it's gold. I can't even tell you how excited people get.
Yeah, agreed.
Especially, again, it goes back to creating FOMO. And if you can create FOMO for the big guys that are back in the home office, the budget's going to go up.
Yeah, agreed.
You even make an appearance.
Agreed. Somebody asked a question about insurance. I'll just say this real quick. Since we're going to be out of time here in a second, you can get insurance for live events. You can get rain insurance, flood insurance, snow insurance, weather insurance, you name it. There's all kinds of different insurance. So if that's what you're talking about, but on the other side, event insurance, you almost always have to under contract carry $1 million. It doesn't have to be expensive.
No, there's a company called Jack Butine, B like boy, UTINE, who's one of the biggest in the industry, and they're used to events. And they also have insurance available for your exhibitors and sponsors, which is also really good to have them do it. A lot of them can just do it on the rider from their business.
Right.
It doesn't cost them anything from their insurance company, but it's always a good idea. Just, we live in a litigious society, so be prepared.
Right. And if you are doing a big outdoor event or an outdoor music festival or whatever, and it gets rained out, there is insurance for that. As a matter of fact, the Capel family in Louisiana that does one of the largest RV shows in the entire country, when a hurricane came in and that event got literally washed out, that's what saved their bacon, was having rain insurance. And there's all kinds of event insurance.
It's an investment. And if you never have to use it, God bless.
Yeah.
But if you do, you're going to be glad you did.
Yeah, for sure. All right, friends. Well, Stephanie Selesnick, thank you so much for being a friend of Niche, and thanks so much for sharing. And we'll send out a copy so you can rewatch this. We'll send that out within the next 24 hours or so, or at the very latest next week. And then Stephanie, do you want folks to reach out to you for the slides, or how do we want to handle that? They want to copy the slides?
Yeah, well, I'll be sending out an email to everybody, and if you're interested, just ping me back, and I'll get it out to you.
That sounds great.
Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you, Ryan.
Good luck my pleasure.
You should definitely go to his conference. It's amazing.
I appreciate that. And if you've got topics you'd like us to cover, we'll put together some more webinars next year. If you got topics you'd like covered, drop me an email. I'll put my email address, the email address here for you. So just help@nichemediaevents.com, and let us know topics that you'd like to see us cover as we do more of these. And Stephanie, thanks so much. And have fun at going to more shows. I'm a little jealous. I love going to trade shows. So I'd love to be out in Vegas.
We have SEMA next week. So yes.
Yeah. Oh, SEMA's going to be great. So, all right, friends, appreciate y'all. And thanks so much, Stephanie. Have a good day, everybody. And there's the email address in the chat box for more topics. All right, Stephanie, thanks so much, everybody. Take care.